Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Marie Kato. The coalition of the willing meets on Thursday with President Volodymyr Zelensky as we await the details of the three-part Ukrainian counterproposal delivered to the U.S. overnight. Europe is keen to regain an active role in these peace negotiations and to support Ukraine and the U.S. in reaching peace with Russia. Will its footing be stronger by the end of this week? At the same time, the Baltic region needs to manage its own security, and to that effect, Baltic skies are now reinforced by German Eurofighters as part of the Baltic Air Policing Initiative. To discuss the significance of these developments, we're joined by Louis Wierenga, lecturer in international relations at the Baltic Defense College. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So let's begin with the revised peace plan that we await to see. It's been delivered by Ukraine to the US. What are your thoughts and what do you think will emerge?
Well, my thoughts is that it is a positive counterbalance to the proposed peace plan, because this is Ukraine with the backing of Europe signaling to the Trump administration what it wants to see if they're going to be sidelined in the negotiations, which is happening. I think it's important to look at the strength of multilateralism around this, with multilateral dialogues going on between European allies and Ukraine versus the bilateral meetings between Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and at times President Trump, along with Mr. Putin. I think the biggest thing here is what Europe's role with Ukraine will be once Russia's war of aggression ceases, when that happens. But there are a couple of things that I want to touch on here. One is the issue of sovereign territory. The entirety of Ukraine's sovereignty will be reconfirmed, and a total and complete non-aggression agreement that's reached between both Ukraine and Russia, but as well as NATO. And this is a way to diplomatically stop Russia's war of aggression. The other thing is that there's a point in there that NATO accession for Ukraine really will depend on the consensus of NATO members. So right now, that's kind of a continuation of where we were before, let's say, last winter, after the 2024 summit in Washington, when Ukraine was promised a bridge to membership. And the last thing is that Ukraine will be able to receive robust security guarantees. That's not something that Vladimir Putin will like, but that's something that is very necessary. And you have solidarity across the bloc trying to convince the Trump administration this is something that actually needs to be in a peace plan, if we want to actually call it that and have it mean that.
President Zelensky has been on a diplomatic spree around key European capitals, London, Brussels, Rome. Now the coalition of the willing is coming together. What developments can we expect to see?
Well, I think a lot of it is going to hinge on the potential unfreezing of Russian assets. So the freezing of Russian assets. So right now, the EU is set to have a meeting on the 18th of November, and what they're doing is really racing to use emergency powers to freeze some Russian assets, and that issue is going to fund Ukraine for a couple of years going forward. Now, I think the second thing right now is just a continuation. As you mentioned, President Zelensky is going around meeting with key European leaders. That is going to continue, and there's going to be a diplomatic feat of strength, I think, between Europe and Washington to try and convince President Trump that this is the right course of action to go. I mean, the big issue for the Americans right now, for the current administration, I should say, is that Europe do more for its defense and security, and part of that It's not just spending and it's not just procurement, it's actually foreign policy, and that's what we're seeing enacted right now. So I would expect that to continue and for European leaders, including President Zelensky, to come to the table to President Trump, say, hey, we've got a better deal for you. Here's why.
So after this meeting today of the Coalition of the Willing, we have another meeting of European leaders scheduled for Monday in Berlin. So really that effort amongst the Europeans is really gaining momentum. What can we expect to happen there? Do you think that that will be a definitive turning point? Obviously, a lot depends on what emerges out of this counterproposal.
I think that will be kind of the fine-tuning of the counterproposal and a way to really think how they can sell this as a unified package that ticks a couple of the boxes. So one, it'll have to, if you're looking at it from the White House's perspective, it'll have to be bringing an end to the war. Now, there is a clear stance from European allies about who's responsible for this war, and that we have to treat that party, i.e. Russia, as such. And that needs to be in there with language that indicates that, and with some kind of implementation of policies, whether it be saying that, yes, actually, Ukraine does have the right to choose if they want to continue in their efforts to join NATO, and they do have the right to territorial integrity. They do have the right to have security guarantees from Europe and the United States if the U.S. is willing. So I think that this is going to be sort of as best of a multilateral effort as you can get, because everybody wants to make sure that this thing is airtight, and that when it is presented to the Trump administration, that President Trump will change course from the initial 28-point peace plan that was presented to the Russians, which really, I have to say, was not advantageous to Ukraine, unfortunately. And that is the big issue. And then the second issue is what that means for European security architecture going forward, because we see a lot of developments in Europe about other European countries' security and how to reassess the security environment, which includes a lot of hybrid threats and acts of aggression on behalf of Russia, and what to do about that going forward.
Well, Europe is definitely concerned because we see this emerging alignment between the US and Russia definitely this week. It's been discussed a lot. Do you think that this alignment might actually become, well, do you think it's actually possible to overcome in order to reach a constructive peace plan?
I hope so. And, I hope that there's not going to be a new era of international security that is defined by spheres of influence for larger powers. And I think that that's also something that will be a very key point for European leaders. You see a lot of cohesion amongst European leaders, because this is in on their continent, and the hybrid attacks that are really have been amped up in the past 3 years, especially the past 2 years, and even since the autumn, they've become more frequent and more aggressive. And this is something that simply can't be ignored any longer. So there is no choice but to take direct action. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the U.S. administration, how the president himself views this going forward, because they have met with a lot of the people who are being showed right now in the feature, the NATO Secretary General, the British Prime Minister, the French President. They've all met with President Trump. They've all presented their concerns, and yet it looks like he's trying to arrange a way for the Americans to be cordial with both parties. And of course, there is something to be said about the Trump administration losing patience with Russia. They keep this. They keep up their war of aggression. They keep assaulting Ukraine, but they're trying to get some kind of political victory, which European leaders play a key and important part in making sure that does not happen.
Now, Solly, as we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about the significance of the arrival of the German Eurofighters in Malbork for NATO's air policing initiative. What does that mean for the policing posture in the Baltic region?
Well, that definitely strengthens, the eastern flank. I mean, this German deployment to Poland is the second concurrent air policing detachment from the German Air Force. They had some Eurofighters that had been leading the air policing mission in Romania, actually, and it is a direct response to some of the events that I alluded to earlier in this conversation of this past autumn, which were the airspace violations by Russian fighter jets in NATO's eastern skies, and the kamikaze drones, which have come into NATO territory. And they were also deployed on August and September, which is somewhere around Gdansk, some 60 or so kilometers around Gdansk, and also the Kaliningrad exclave. And so I think that there's another important aspect that to discuss here is that Poland is going to work more closely with Germany on ground-based defense systems as well. So Paweł Zalewski and Neil Schmidt from the German MOD met very recently, and they were talking about an enhanced partnership on drone defense. And Paweł Zalewski said that he would like to draw on and make use of Germany's experience in this area. Well, what he's referring to is earlier this month, Germany, they used their federal police units, not military. They have a new federal police unit to hunt, jam, and shoot down hostile drones. And they've put a lot of money, some 100 million euros for just one calendar year for drone defense equipment, training, funding, and even an artificial intelligence assisted detection system. So I think there's going to be a lot of multi-domain operation cooperation here going forward, and that just shows more and more allied cohesion. Who can learn from whom else, how, and where it matters for security and defense of Europe.
Of course. Louis Wierenga, lecturer in international relations at the Baltic Defense College. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
It's always a pleasure.
And that's a wrap for World Talks this morning on TVP World. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure you stay tuned for more on our channel. Goodbye.